Okay, we should be live.
Right.
So, thank you for joining me. So everybody who's watching this, I'm here with Kelly Yarbrough, who, funny story, we actually met when I was a sophomore in college at K-State, and she was you were a graduate assistant at the time, right?
Right.
Yeah,
It
so
was drawing,
it
wasn't
was,
it?
yeah, it was
Yeah.
drawing. It was like drawing one. It was my
Yeah.
first drawing class at K-State. But yeah, so you were the graduate assistant for that. And then I've always just loved your work since then. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah, so we're going to be talking about your artist practice, the Tallgrass Artist Residency, all of the cool work you're doing, your field rep work with the KCAIC, all that fun stuff. So anybody who's watching, feel free to leave comments or questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer them. So Kelly, to start off, do you want to tell us about your creative and or professional background, kind of where you started and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. And thanks so much for inviting me to do this, Allison. This has been
Sure.
really fun. And it's been fun to kind of touch base with you in different ways over the years
Yeah.
and see your career take off too. That's been a neat thing. Yeah, so my creative professional background. So I'm originally from Plano, Texas, which is kind of the suburbs of Dallas. And I kind of consider myself an artist or a drawer, like as long as I can remember, and was kind of encouraged to pursue that. And I did that through school. In undergrad in Texas, I did art and also a degree in English. But I think it really wasn't until I moved up to the Kansas City area that I really kind of realized that if this was going to be a consistent part of my life, I needed to take it more seriously and really cultivate that. The Kansas City arts community uh, was and is great. I found I found ways to plug in just through meeting people, different opportunities, whether it was volunteer work or jobs here and there, and just cultivating friendships, relationships with people that took their own practice seriously. I got to see what that looks like in people's lives in different ways. So I really credit Kansas City as kind of instilling that hunger in me, I think. From there, I decided to pursue graduate studies to kind of go to the next level in that way. And I ended up at K-State for my MFA. I worked with a great team of faculty out here, and Erin Wiersma was my main faculty advisor. So it was great to really focus on my drawing practice through graduate studies, and never before had my sort of main job, if you will, be in the studio making work and researching that work like it's your full-time job. Of course, we were teaching as well, but that time and 3 years of that, oh my gosh, that reinvented my drawing practice in a big way. And it also, gave me the opportunity to experience what prioritizing my drawing practice looked and felt like. But it was also the time when I really started learning more about the tallgrass prairie, which is what I'm surrounded by out here in Manhattan, Kansas. I'm still in Manhattan, Kansas, by the way. And that became a huge part of my practice, my studio drawing practice, and sort of my larger ecosystem of work, if you will, which I can talk about more later. So that's kind of a general trajectory in my creative practice. But I've always been kind of I guess a learner and maybe purpose-driven job seeker, we'll say. So it was always really important to me to try and pursue work occupations that align with my values and had some sort of larger purpose. And I've been really fortunate to cultivate relationships with people and be able to find work that kind of fits into that that set of values and worldview that I have. So my just to add to my professional work, I'm currently right now working for a privately owned prairie preserve out here in Manhattan called Prairie Wood Retreat. I'm the director of community programming out there, and do a whole little ecosystem of projects for them. And then I also work for the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission, which is basically the state art agency for Kansas. And I help connect people with grant funding, along with some other special focus area projects. That's kind of a general nutshell there.
I have a question for my own curiosity. Totally kind of not related, but when you came to K-State and you started working with Aaron, were you doing like kind of the mark making plant, botanical artwork that you're doing now? Were you doing that before? Or did but what I'm trying to ask? Like,
sure, yeah. No, I can speak a little bit to that. Short answer, no, not really. I was always interested in nature in a general way, but I didn't have a real specific focus, and my practice was really more heavily based in realism. And so, but really not for the right reasons, mostly because I was good at it. And I thought that's what, I should do. So no, I mean, Aaron's practice too is really based in abstract expressionism. Interestingly, this is not my story to tell, but she also started from a figurative drawing place, and her work changed a lot over the years too. But when I met Erin, I mean, she was pretty firmly rooted in like abstract expressionism and minimalism in some ways.
I know she goes out. Sorry, she goes out in like the prairie burns, and she kind of experiences that. And does that has to do with her work?
That when I was a grad student though.
Oh, okay.
So that's been a cool thing to see evolve in her work as well. But but she definitely like pushed me to really, I think, free myself from the chains of realized form in a way, and like really explore drawing as mark making and as more of a physical process and moving through space, all that good stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I just was curious. So let's talk a little bit more about your artist practice. Can you kind of tell us, you called it an ecosystem. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So how shall I dig into this question? I have my drawing studio practice. You can see a couple of works in progress behind me. This is my studio and office space for the time being. But I think through my grad school years and just getting to know myself better, it's important to me to work with people too. The drawing practice is pretty personal and individualized, I guess, but it's important for me to work with people. And I found that I really enjoyed creating opportunities for other artists, other creatives, and people to connect with artists and creatives. So kind of from following those passions, I got myself involved in a slew of other things. But at this point, I kind of consider all those different things kind of part of one bigger whole. And so I think of it as an ecosystem because, there's different inputs and different sort of like energy flows, we'll say, but they all kind of feed each other in some way, whether it's directly or indirectly. And they all have to do with me and my energy and time. So I kind of have to think of it as my ecosystem. We'll probably talk a little bit more about some other projects within that, but basically my artistic practice, some of my professional work, but then also kind of a series of service and service leadership positions that I've had and I've been cultivating over the years. are kind of part of this ecosystem.
Yeah. And you just had a sorry, I keep looking down at my phone because I'm watching for comments,
Oh
just
yeah,
so you know.
you're most
So everybody watching, we have 13 people right now, which is pretty cool. But you guys can leave comments, ask questions, anything like that. So um, we were talking about, oh, you just had a new show, right? You just made a new series of work. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, I just hung a show up at Tabor College in Hillsborough, Kansas, from an invitation from Derek Ham, who's the he's on faculty in design there, and he teaches with Shinhee. Shinhee Chin is the art faculty there too. They're both fantastic. Yeah, I just installed this show a couple weekends ago, and it's called Rewilding, and that's kind of my title for some recent works that make up this show. And by recent works, I mean most things have been finished within the past year. Most of them were started and finished in the past year. Um, so it's, you know, it's always interesting to kind of like group and decide how to group and show bodies of work. But looking back on the work that I created in the past year and kind of considering the landscape of life and going through COVID and a lot of you know, turbulent times, we'll say. This concept of rewilding kind of felt sticky to me, stuck in my mind a little bit. And basically that's a conservation term that I heard from one of my friends who works for a Tompkins Conservation, which is a big international organization. It's a very specific conservation term that basically means, you know, turning space back into its wild form, and kind of letting the ecosystem manage itself, I guess, is a short way to put that. But it made me think about rewilding our own spaces and places, maybe more conceptually, psychologically. And wilderness kind of being the things that, well, I'm looking back more now towards maybe a historical perspective in this country, but wilderness kind of being beyond these frontiers, these spaces that we have less control over. There we may be afraid of. There's unknowns, and the frontiers being the edges where we encounter that wilderness. And so these were sticky concepts in my mind, we'll just say. So I kind of pursued that in some of these drawings that I made for this show. That's what I'll say about that.
Awesome. And they're mixed media, right? They're a mixture of materials.
Yeah, I mostly like to work on mixed media on paper. I think it's a really that's become a pretty big part of my drawing practice is to show let the drawing process show through. So you can see all the little marks. You know, there's a lot of loose marks, some tight marks, but it's kind of an orchestra of mark making that's it's very reminiscent of the tallgrass prairie.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Oh, and you show at Prairie Brook, don't you?
I
In
do,
Overland Park?
yes.
Yeah.
Prairie Brook Gallery in Overland Park
Cool.
represents my work. Yes, they have, and they have a number of my larger pieces too. Yeah, I started working larger in grad school, and I love to do that when I can too.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're fabulous to work with. Mhm.
Cool. And funny story, I almost worked there.
Did Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It didn't end up working out, but I went for like it was like a they like had me try it out for a day.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they're super nice. So
Yeah. Oh, that's neat.
small world.
Yeah.
What else? Let's talk about, do you want to talk about Prairie Wood a little bit more and what you do
Sure.
there?
Sure, yeah. I started working with Prairie Wood here in Manhattan in 2017. And they are, I mentioned they're a privately owned preserve. They have over 400 acres, a lot of which is actually in conservation easements or is protected somehow. Um, but they also they have like lodging and they do some events and things like that. But I was brought on because they really wanted to do more public programming, and public programming that engaged creativity and the tallgrass prairie that was right there, which are like two of my loves.
Mhm.
So it's kind of it's been an interesting journey in and of itself, but we've kind of developed some different program series. We have open trail days. We got a grant for a visiting artist project last summer. We're kind of cultivating these different outdoor learning spaces. And we also opened the Blue Sage Gallery, which is a small little art space, that's kind of undergoing a new facelift at the moment now
Cool.
too. So it's kind of a, yeah, it's outdoor acreage and sort of a campus of these different spaces, that's really cool. We're kind of we're it's like an experimental space too. It's always kind of changing and growing, and we're trying new things. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's been fun.
very cool.
Yeah.
I know it's beautiful out there. When I when I was getting married, they were at the bridal show that I went to, and
Oh,
I know some of the people that I know the Kirikoffs and I know the Katzenmeyers. But anyway, yeah, it's a beautiful space out there. So
yeah. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Um, let's jump into the Tallgrass Artist Residency.
Okay,
Let's
sounds
do
good.
it.
Yes, so I manage the Tallgrass Artist Residency in partnership with Derek and Catherine Ham, who are down in Matfield Green, and a whole other team of Matfield Green community members. The Tallgrass Artist Residency started in 2016. It was kind of a get me out of this studio project when I was in my final year of grad school. And this is really one of those projects that I was mentioning that helped me realize that I want to create opportunities for other artists. So basically, I had this seed of an idea, to create an artist residency, where other artists could come experience the tallgrass prairie like I had. And as this idea was forming, I was making connections with some people down in this tiny community called Matfield Green, which is about an hour north of Wichita. It's an hour and a half south of where I am in Manhattan. And it's not too far away from the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve. The preserve is a pretty key factor in there too, because it's our largest public land in the state of Kansas. And it's a real gem. So we have this little community called Matfield Green, which has no real brick and mortar stores, and it has 50 residents, but a lot of them are artists or
Yeah.
people who support the arts. And there's also some really great Airbnb options down there. So there are these sort of ingredients for an artist residency program in that area, in that community, that came together. And through these partnerships, we were able to apply for a grant at early 2016 from the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission. And that's how we were able to fund the program in the first year. And we brought out, I guess that first year we brought out 10 artist residents. We normally now bring out 8 to 9 per year, but we do an open application process. applications are currently open for 2021. Yay.
Deadline is March 13th, right?
March 15th.
15th, that's right.
If you get in by 13th, even better.
Perfect.
A lot of people wait till the last minute. Yeah, so we do this open application process, and then we have a review panel that helps us narrow down and invite 8 to 9 artists of any discipline. We accept writers, dancers, musicians. I mean, any media is open, and residents are awarded 10 nights of lodging at Matfield Station in Matfield Green, and a travel materials stipend for that time. They are a little shorter residencies, but we also bring all the artists back together at the end of the year for a group exhibition and some artist talks. So there's kind of 2 pieces to that time. There's your own individual residency time, and then there's the time when everyone kind of comes back together for this more community oriented experience. That community experience did not get to happen last year because of COVID.
Yeah.
But because we do the individual residencies, and because the lodging spaces have their own like kitchenette and everything, we were able to move forward with the residencies even during COVID, just because people, had their own space. And
yeah.
So that's good. So we at least, we don't know exactly what 2021 will look like, but we can at least move forward with the residency portion. And we really hope that our big community events can happen in October when they are currently scheduled to. But the Tallgrass residency has been a really fantastic project for me personally as an artist to watch it grow, but also I think it's been a wonderful program. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from residents that have participated, from community members in Matfield Green who have so generously stepped up to help with the program, to welcome artists into their home, have a meal, go on a walk. Porch and bonfire time is what you do in Matfield. So that's been huge. And then it's all just, it's so close to the land, to the prairie, that it really gives people, I think, a good experience to further their own research and to just learn and be in the place.
Yeah. And the residents get access to the Tallgrass Prairie Reserve, right?
Yeah, the preserve, the trails are actually open 24/7, but there are some special access sort of opportunities. We definitely connect residents with staff at the preserve for opportunities to learn more, and there might be some special opportunities for access. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. We just got a comment from Catherine Schlott. I can never say her last name, from the Beach Museum. She says Beach Museum of Art has loved hosting the public portion of the Tallgrass. Fingers crossed that we'll be back for fall 2021.
Right. The Beach Museum has been a great partner in the past. When I started the program as a grad student, they're right there, and we had hosted the Tallgrass Symposium. So we had all the artists up in Manhattan to give their talks, and then we did this evening exhibition reception and bonfire down in Matfield Green. So
cool. Sounds awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. And you said that you had applied for a grant for it through the Kansas City, Kansas Creative. I say this all the time and I can never get it right. The KCAIC. And you are actually a field rep for them. You mentioned this earlier. So what do you represent, and what does that mean to be a field rep?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So this is another example of the ecosystem at work here, and how one thing kind of leads to another, because we got the grant from KCAIC in 2016 to start the Tallgrass Artist Residency. And through that process, I got to know the director, Peter Hasso, and kind of got to be a little more familiar with KCAIC and what they do, and that's basically the state arts agency that's been formed since the Arts Commission was dissolved previously. So so kind of through the Tallgrass residency, which after I think it was just the 1 year, we became a partner program basically of KCAIC. So they support the program now on an annual basis, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm now a regional representative, contract work for KCAIC. I serve the Northeast and the Southeast portions of the state. There are, well, now there's four. Yeah, there's four sort of different regions that we've split up the state, and we basically connect with arts organizations and nonprofits in the area to tell them about art grant opportunities from KCAIC.
Yeah.
So that's a process, and I started working in this role like a year and a half ago, a little over a year ago. So it's an ongoing process, and it's just amazing how many either arts organizations or initiatives there are out there. I mean, and some of these places are just like, one person volunteer setups, but they're trying to make a difference in their community, and they're trying to find ways to make these projects happen. And so it's really cool to be able to connect with people and organizations and be like, let me help you. Like, let's talk about your idea. Let me try to match you with some good funding to help you make those ideas come true. So that's my job as regional rep. I also kind of through that job, I also have some special focus areas, which will hopefully lead to some more program development within the state. But my focus areas are art and ecology and residencies. So sometimes we each have sort of different areas, and sometimes we get tapped to help with projects involving these topics. But I get to think about like how Kansas can be a leader in these fields and what we need to achieve that. So that's pretty awesome.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do you want to talk about? Do you have anything that you want to add in that I haven't mentioned yet, or?
Let me think. Well, I don't think, I didn't plug hard enough that the Tallgrass Artist Residency is accepting online applications until March 15th. So if you or any artist in your life would like to spend some time in the Tallgrass Prairie, please check it out. The website for that is tallgrassartistresidency.org, by the way.
Yeah, if anybody has questions or comments, I know we've still have some people watching. Go ahead and write them in the comment section. But question kind of from me, I guess, as an artist who may be applying for the Tallgrass Artist Residency, can you talk about, I know that you said, the artists can be out in the community of Matfield Green, and they can be in the Tallgrass Prairie. But like, can you kind of go through what the day-to-day activities, not activities, but kind of how, like, what do artists do there?
Yeah. So it's a totally self-directed time. I'll say that. So, I mean, the residency is really designed for artists that want to learn and engage with the place for a reason. And some artists will come wanting to, they're in the middle of a project that they want to work more on, or they have an idea and they want to explore it, or they have done this past work and they're really interested to see what their body of experience feels like in this new place. Or, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why artists might want to come, but I would say because, you know, residencies can take all sorts of different forms and lengths and everything, but because ours is kind of a shorter residency, I would say a lot of people use it as sort of, I would say, note taking, like field notes in a way. You know, there's not separate, there's not any formal dedicated workspace, studio space. Now, not to, we've had like installation artists, ceramicists come and find ways to explore their work, but I would say a lot of it is more like being there and note taking, and then taking that experience back into the studio.
Okay.
You know, so we don't have any expectations of artists creating or finishing or leaving something behind while they're doing their residency, because it's a short time.
Yeah.
We do ask for the residents to give some public program, which last year was just like a Zoom talk like this. Just let us know, you know, how's it been? What's your work kind of like? It's just sort of an informal check-in.
Yeah.
But really not until the end of the year, when we have the group exhibition, do we expect artists to really have anything to say about the experience, because it's so short.
Yeah.
You know.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's very self-directed. I mean, I think the best experience is artists will make the effort themselves to reach out to neighbors, to community members, to staff at the preserve, you know, to
Mhm.
explore the region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Sounds really cool. Um, we have some questions. So one of the questions is, can you tell us more about the Prairie Wood venue spaces?
Ooh, okay, yes. So, there's a few different venue spaces. Have they have some lodging options, and they have some event venues. And it's really, the history of Prairie Wood is really interesting too, because Kale and who are the owners are artists themselves, and have been kind of creating these works, if you will, for the past 10 years. But they sort of, the main site, we'll say, is, it's all kind of centered around Wildcat Creek Road, which is on the west side of Manhattan. But there's this, they have a barn and home that they basically remodeled and turned into this really cool event space. It was an equestrian barn, and now it's like a 200-person event space. You can open the barn doors and everything. That's kind of where the Blue Sage Gallery is also nestled. So they do a lot of like weddings and banquets and bigger events, but it's also been a really cool place to host some community programs as well. And it's kind of the main hub for open trail days. This is all right next to about 180 acres of tall grass prairie that has walking trails through it and parking on site. So that's kind of like a main hub. And then there's a guest house that people can rent and stay with the family or whatnot. There's also Stonehouse, which is this other really cool old limestone farmhouse that was redone. Also can be rented out, like an Airbnb guest home kind of situation, but it's like gorgeous, picturesque.
Yeah.
um, and you know, they have a couple of other properties. Like there's actually one in town that I called Sunset Cottage, that actually has a lot of my artwork on the walls. So it's been fun to work with them too, as an artist, because some of my work gets
Yeah.
shown up
That's
in
the one
places.
on Sunset and, is that
Thackeray.
Anderson? Oh,
Oh yeah,
okay.
Anderson.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
right by Anderson.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's fun. I think the vision for the Prairie Wood spaces west of town too is really just having these beautifully remodeled, curated spaces that are connected by trails, basically,
Yeah,
connected by prairie. So
that's cool.
yeah.
Very cool. Let's see. We have another question. Who are some of the artists who inspire or inform your work today?
Oh my gosh. This is so funny because I I should have written this out. Do you remember you know Terry Schmidt?
Yeah.
I every time, and still today, every time I have to give an artist talk, I'm like, Terry's gonna ask who my art influencers are,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna have to list out
Man,
some
I
really
miss
good
her.
names. That's so funny.
She's
Should have
awesome.
written it down. Well, I would say that I am drawn to a lot of um, artists that root themselves in contemporary drawing, but also some abstract expressionism. But I would say like contemporary artists, I love Mark Bradford. I love Anselm Kiefer. These are both like they work large, like monumental scale, mixed media, very textural.
Mm.
Mark Bradford kind of uses a lot of repetition with simple objects too, but like the way these little marks or fragments of things add up to these like monumental landscapes. I'm using that word loosely. I love that. I love the texture that they create, and yeah, I mean they both have very strong political messages behind their work as well.
Yeah.
I um, I also actually find myself really drawn to um, like some, I guess, post-impressionist, expressionist painters. Edward Vuillard I've really been into lately because of the color and composition that they use. I feel like I really need to study um, that kind of that period of painters. And they did a lot of um, wallpaper and like fabric painting. And again, just seeing sort of these like colors and patterns blanketed across spaces and in really interesting compositions. I see that in my work, or I admire how they yeah lay pattern and color across surface. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Um, yes, I'm gonna think of like 10 more names after this.
I know, right? Have a whole list. That's okay. If you think of any more during this, let us know. Let's see. Kathy agrees. Kathy Liao from Mid America Arts Alliance agrees that those are great artists.
Thank you, Kathy.
Let's see. Oh, okay. So Tony Crawford says, Kelly, do you have any plans for the future, personally or professionally? So what's coming up next?
Oh, Tony. Of course I have plans. I always have plans. The future? How far out do we want to go here?
However far.
Yeah, no, I'm always working on plans. You can't see it, but I've got a whiteboard up here that has both my week tasks of what I actually have to get done, but then the bottom half is all just sort of like cloud bubbles of ideas and, and
Cool.
things. Um, wow, how do I answer that question? I mean, well, okay, I'll say this. What can I talk about? I I'll say with my work with Prairie Wood, we have a space called Walnut Pond, which is kind of where we hosted our visiting artists last year. But we're really interested in cultivating that as an outdoor learning space. It's sort of like a 35-acre restored prairie walking path, pond, pavilion, but it hasn't been used as like an explicit Prairie Wood venue, and so we're doing some interesting things with that, and I think we started that last year. We'll do more this year. I'm working with, I can say this, I'm working with the new director of the Wonder Workshop to hopefully host like
Cool.
host a gardening program for kids out there this summer. Fingers crossed
That's
that all
awesome.
works out.
Very cool.
And also we're working with IE Discoveries, which is another really cool small business here in town that serves kids. And again, like kind of exploring these ideas of learn and play experiences outdoors in the prairie for kids.
Cool.
So that that space and that kind of programming is something we're leaning into more, and I'm excited to explore it. I am not the expert on what to do with children, but I am finding people in our community who are, and we
Perfect.
will welcome them.
Collaboration. I love it.
Collaboration, yes.
Do you garden yourself?
Yes, when I have the space to, yes. I'm not, I don't have the most green thumb, but I love trying. And
Mhm.
it's important that thank you for asking that. Actually, Tony, that is a goal I have, is to have a garden again one day. Because it kind of reminds me of drawing. Like, it's a process, right? You're never gonna like have arrived at and achieved peak gardenness,
Yeah,
like it's something you do every year. It's something you work at, you grow, you cultivate, much like a drawing practice. So
cool. Full circle.
yeah, full circle,
Very
perfect.
cool. Um, and I have a question. So you do a lot with art and ecology. Do you, not to say that you have to have like a certificate of ecology, like, but how did you start? Were you just interested in it, or did you take classes on ecology, or, you know?
Yeah. Well, I love all these questions that give me an excuse to like give shout outs to good people in my life. This is going to be a good one. So, yes, I have no like academic background in ecology or science. And I think I mentioned that I always had this sort of like vague interest in nature, but I grew up in the suburbs. So, nature was always something that was like out there, like in Colorado or wherever you go on
Yeah.
vacation. Um, but I actually, I would say also kind of the time when I moved up to Kansas City was when I learned more about that nature is where you are,
Yeah.
everywhere. um, um, I'll shout out to Bridging the Gap as an organization in Kansas City that I have a history of volunteering with through a number of different ways, but Kansas City Wildlands, and Linda Lairbaum, who heads up that program. Yes, I put you in touch with Linda.
Yeah.
Yes. So Linda and her husband Sid were kind of my Kansas City parents when I first moved up there. And I would say that, and Linda's an artist too. She's a sculptor by training, but I would say that she really did a lot to open my eyes to the beauty of the prairie and the importance of the prairie ecology. They kind of they do volunteer days and tend to some prairie remnants in the Kansas City area.
Cool.
Um, and she seemed to have different eyes for things that like I didn't even notice or wouldn't even know to look for, and that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And through that connection, I think was how I first heard about Konza Prairie out here in Manhattan, Kansas. So even before I ever thought I would come to K-State for grad school or be in Manhattan, I knew that Konza Prairie was something really important and really special. Um, and fast forward to when I'm here, I now actually serve on the board of Friends of Konza Prairie, and I help them with an annual art show benefit called Visions of the Flint Hills that
Yeah.
happens at Buttonwood Art Space in
Yes.
Kansas City.
Yes.
um, through that and through doing Konza Prairie docent training with Jill Hocus, I got to deepen my knowledge of not only Konza but the prairie itself and that whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I mean, that I guess that kind of generally answers the question. I guess just it all happened so fast,
Yeah.
Allison.
I know.
It's just through like being here and knowing people, getting to know people and listening. I would also say that just like it's important to me to explore and know the place where I'm at, wherever that is. That's actually literally how I got the Prairie Wood job. Was I was a grad student again, and I was looking on the map, looking for green spaces. I do this a lot.
Nice.
If I'm just like, I want to go do something, find a new place, look for the green spots on the map and zoom in and figure out what it is. That's how I met Kale and Becky at Prairie Wood. I was like, what is this? It's green.
Nice. Very cool.
And that's how I learned. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in Manhattan, so honestly, I took the concept of prairie for granted. It was, it was a hop in your car and go hang out with your friend and take a walk kind of thing. It wasn't like this is the tall grass prairie. Yeah. So now that I don't live there anymore, it's I miss it. I miss being able to just go there all the time. But yeah, I feel like I appreciate it more for the kind of reserve that it is. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating place. I mean, they were not only is it preserved prairie, but it's also a long-term ecological research site.
yeah,
And it was in the first, I think, and maybe the first or one of the first, I should know this, of those sites in the nation. I think there's like 24 of them now,
yeah,
but this was started back in the 80s, I think. So it took some foresight to see that we needed to preserve this space, but also watch the long-term effects of climate change on these places. So
yeah,
it's a huge, it's a destination. It's an international research destination.
yeah,
That theme is that's been one of the things most surprising to me about just living in Kansas is how many gems there are here and how many like really amazing um, organizations, institutions that people who live around here don't even know about. The Land Institute in Salina is another one. I mean, they have an international following with the research that they do, but
yeah.
it's just this little place tucked away outside of
I
Salina,
know.
Kansas.
Oh, Salina. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, let's see. Well, I think that's all I have. I don't think I have any more questions. And I don't see any more comments in the chat. So, is there anything else you want to add? I know I already asked you that, but anything I missed?
I don't think you missed anything. We could talk for a long time, but no, I don't know. I love meeting new people and talking about ideas, and
Yeah,
dang COVID gets in the way of meeting for coffee or beer, but we could do
no,
that again. I love that. If
yeah,
you love any of the things that I've talked about today, I'd love to talk with you more.
yeah,
Um, I'm very into collaborations and kind of like exploring new ideas. So, and I'm so fortunate that I have a number of avenues by which to explore these new ideas. So,
yeah,
um, so reach out.
yeah. Really quick, Catherine just put in the chat. She said, just want to mention the Prairie Studies Initiative at K-State with a focus on science and humanities. Were you involved with that or?
So that not explicitly, but it is a very cool thing that I'm glad that the Beach Museum is doing.
Yeah,
Linda Duke spearheaded that, I think, and I believe it's kind of a partnership with faculty members, and they're doing a lot more work with the Vollen Store, which is a fantastic venue, art space that is growing
yeah.
down outside of Alma, Kansas.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's another very cool Kansas collaboration that everyone should know about.
Yeah, Vollen Store is cool. And it's a good, they have artists that stay there, right? They have
Yeah,
a,
they have an artist residency
yeah,
program too. I mean, that's another like hidden gem. There
I
are a number of really cool artist residency programs in Kansas.
yeah, yeah, that was my parents and I went to go visit the Vollen Store because I'd heard about it because I used to work for Jay Nelson at the Strucker Nelson Gallery. But anyway, so like I've heard the name, I had heard the name before, and we kind of were like, yeah, let's go. So we drove out there, and it was literally like this building in the middle of a field, kind of, with like some little buildings, like farm type buildings around, but it was such a cool space, and they had a cool show. I think your work was up at the time that I went. I think that's why we went, because I wanted to see your work. You had work there, right?
Oh, yeah, I was in a group show, the Rural Urban
Yeah,
Invitational Group Show. Yeah.
that's what it was.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was just a really cool space. So Volun store, check it out.
Absolutely.
um, so yeah, well, it was so good to talk to you.
Yes, you
Um,
too, Allison. Thank you.
yeah, and well, I hope you have a good rest of your week, and hopefully you can collaborate personally with people soon. So yeah.
That would be lovely.
All right. Well, I will let you go. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.